I would love for there to be more than two parties. The bicameral system that we have is not effective. It's definitely not effective for where we're trying to go in the future. You can't have coalitions like you have in Europe. You can't have independent candidates because they don't meet the bureaucratic requirements to even be promoted, right? And then, like, even if you look at how our system currently works now, it's not the American voter who gets to choose the candidates that get to move forward. It's some group of people that we don't even vote on. So there has to be a change to that process if we want to believe that we will have leadership in the future that truly represents the people. Right now, what we have is a popularity contest between two candidates that we may or may not have really chosen in the first place.
Well, and in a country that's extremely large, has way too many people to even have us it's like we're not in 8th grade and we're choosing a class president. That's kind of what it feels like, you know?
You're right. It's like we're choosing our class president before we even realize.
Right. This is like literally the president of this entire nation. And I don't know, I'm thinking of other democratic countries in the world that have this many people. Like, it's not a thing.
Yeah, it's true. It's a weird place where the United States has found itself. And that's a part of our strength, but it's also a part of our vulnerability. And it's what our enemies try to exploit, is our own development process. They try to call us flawed and broken and corrupt when we recognize that we're just figuring it out every day.
Well, I mean, look, in the global stage, like the notion of like, we're just trying to figure it out doesn't really fly. I mean, I'd like to ask one question about this kind of divisiveness, and I'm not trying to be a threat monger here, but you know, one of the things that Sinwar said, you know, that he learned when he was in a prison in Israel was that when there is infighting in Israel will be the best time to seize upon the vulnerability of the country. And October 7th happened after years of protests and civil unrest among the Israeli population. I would obviously don't want anything horrible to happen to us. And I wonder if we're in this particularly vulnerable place because we're so fiercely in opposition here about kind of core values, or at least that's what it seems like. Does that put us in a vulnerable place, like for, I don't want to say our enemies, but for adversaries in the world?
I think Americans understand there's a divisiveness that we need to get past if we are going to increase our level of security. Does that mean that our enemies are going to be able to unravel what we've built because of our divisiveness? That's the real question. I think right now the answer is no. There's no level of sophistication that Russia or China or Iran or North Korea has.
To be like, hey, everybody get off the floor. We're going to have a big old kumbaya with Russia so that we can defeat Trump. That's not going to happen. My yoga studio is not going to be taken over by Iranian operatives.
Correct. So I'm not worried about that. But I do believe you are totally right that there is a vulnerability that's inherent in our bipartisan nature right now. What I think is also important to understand, at least from my experience, is that our core values, I don't think our core values are as opposite as sometimes politicians make them out to be, right? I think there are plenty of people out there who are actually independent, but they're forced to identify with one of two camps.